And now, like I said, Bill is going to come up and do more on Viz, much better than me. Very quickly, I'm sick of my voice, people, I'm sorry. Bill is a data visualization designer from Calgary. He's focused on exploring NHL hockey statistics to find hidden stories worth sharing. His work is published on a sports blog he co-founded called the wincolumn.ca 3 years ago that uses data visualizations as the main driver to share hockey narratives with an international audience of hockey enthusiasts. Breaking down complex data into easily understandable data visualizations is an everlasting mantra of his work. Bill.
Thank you. All right, thank you, Allison. And I would also like to thank Peter for the diversity initiative, because without him, I wouldn't be able to be here today. So first, a little bit about me. Here's a photo of me with Brian Burke. It's my favorite photo. And, oh, how do I? Yeah, so I'm rowing the boat here.
Nothing moved, right? Oh, it just popped up. JK, JK. Oh, wait, there we go. The screen's up.
Or I'll just let you do it. I guess in the meantime, this is a shirt with Dougie Hamilton on it. Everybody needs to know that Dougie was the original founder of the Dougie Bomb with the banana phone. All right, thank you. All right, from the top. So this is a photo of me in a boat. I'd like to highlight that, alphabetical ordered lists are kind of my thing. I kind of like the way they work. So the thing about hockey analytics and why I'm here is I want to talk about how a lot of people find it daunting, and really, when you look at all these fancy stats, you really don't know what you're talking about or how to understand it. So I think a really good tool to get into using it is to use data visualizations. So the first thing you need to know about the data visualization is obviously your data. So there are many different types of data available, like categorical, ordinal, binary, or in hockey terms, like things that describe something, like the team you're on, things that describe the order of something, like the standings in the hockey league, or things that describe something that compared to one another, like forward versus defense. Quantitatively, there's things that include numbers, such as the number of shutouts a goalie has, which is a discrete value, versus a goalie's save percentage, which is a continuous value, where a number can fall along the entire number line. So now that we have our data, we can go look at to how you can make a data viz. So there are many different things that you can use, such as coding languages, spreadsheets, graphic editors, and more recently, dashboard editors, such as Tableau. Or you can take it old school and just draw it by hand. Print out a chart of the ice and just make marks on the sheet of paper. This slide is text heavy on purpose because I want to show that there are many different tools available and you shouldn't be afraid to get your feet wet. And yeah, you don't be afraid to combine things as well. If you think that combining two different types of tools works well for you, go ahead and do it. So the method. If you want to make a data viz, what should you do first? The first thing you should do is find out what's worth answering to you. And then Micah alluded to this as well. And you should also know how to communicate that to your audience. Once you have something that you want to answer, you got to figure out where you can find the data and what to do with the data once you have it. So the question that I want to ask today is, how does scoring depth vary between teams? So when we talk about scoring depth, classically we think about the number of points a player will put up relative to his teammates, as well as relative to other players in the league. So a bar plot is a very powerful way to do this. As you can see, a team's best player is probably 10 to 15 times better than the team's worst player, at least in terms of scoring points. But if you just do a little tweaking to your data viz, you can change the chart to make it a lot more compelling. So here we have the chart for Anaheim taken at the time of the All-Star break. You can see that Ryan Getzlav, it's not labeled, but he's first on the team. Him, alongside a few other players, basically from 12 to 3 o'clock, are the best players on the team in terms of scoring. The depth players on the team, they show up between about 3 to 9 o'clock, and everything that happens after 9 o'clock is more or less noise. Funnily enough, my neighbors seem to think the same thing. Up next, what I would have wanted to do was show you Arizona and then go through every team one at a time alphabetically. However, that's not a good way to present data, and that's not a good way to make comparisons. So a good way to do that is to use small multiples, and Allison showed this as well with her spaghetti charts. But you basically use the same chart again and again with the different sets of data that you have. That way, you can make comparisons almost immediately based on how a chart looks. So what happens when you combine all of that together? Well, you get this. So here we have a snapshot of the entire league taken at the time of the All-Star break. Every row represents a division, and every team is color-coded by their main colors. With that information alone, you should be able to guess which teams are which, and I'm not talking about the Edmonton Oilers and Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. Maybe I am. But you can also make comparisons between teams really easily, like how Dallas was, at the time of the All-Star break, third in the division, despite 4 other teams below them in the same division having way more scoring power. Obviously, the best goaltending in the league will do that for you, but these are the types of comparisons that you can make instantly. Here's the whole key in case you wanted to find your favorite team. Unfortunately, teams like Detroit, they don't show up as well, but that's kind of because they're not getting the scoring that they are desperately in need of. So the main takeaway is we looked at a question and we were able to answer it purely using Datavis. We used multiple types of data, such as how teams were ranked compared to one another. We used discrete data, such as the number of points each player had, and we used categorical data by labeling every team with their color. We were able to answer the question, but most importantly, you can show these charts to anybody, and it would make sense. You can show this to the person beside you, and they know, again, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl carry the Oilers. Or you can show this to a coach, and he can get a little bit more out of his depth players, those 3 to 9 o'clock players that aren't contributing as much. Maybe something like this can be a little bit more motivating for them. And since there's a little bit of time, there's a few extra considerations that you should consider when you're making a data viz. You want to be truthful, and you can use more visual aspects to encode data, like I did, using team colors so that you can know right away. And finally, you shouldn't be afraid to try and try again. Don't just make a plot and be happy with it. Just keep iterating until you find something that works for you, because ultimately it's your story and you're deciding how to tell it. Thank you.